There's a militant group claiming to be like a modern-day Robin Hood. We've got the details coming up. I'm Carl Lazouz. This is CNN Student News. We begin in Mexico today, where residents facing a health crisis are dealing with an earthquake as well. The quake struck yesterday near the resort city of Acapulco. It measured a magnitude 5.6 according to the U.S. Geological Survey. The tremor was felt as far away as Mexico City, where people headed out of buildings and into the streets. There were no initial reports of damage or injury immediately following the earthquake. Now, you might have noticed some people in that video wearing masks, and that is because of the swine flu outbreak we've been telling you about. Yesterday, Mexican officials confirmed that at least 20 deaths were connected to the virus. The World Health Organization says there are at least 75 confirmed cases of swine flu worldwide, including at least 40 in the U.S. The organization has raised its pandemic alert to a level 4. That means that the virus is significantly capable of being transmitted between people. The U.S. government has declared a public health emergency because of the outbreak. President Obama says this is a precautionary measure.
We are closely monitoring the emerging cases of swine flu in the United States. And this is obviously a cause for concern and requires a heightened state of alert. But it's not a cause for alarm.
Well, Dr. Sanjay Gupta went to Mexico where this outbreak began to explore some of the questions surrounding the virus.
2 weeks ago, Mexico City, a young woman is rushed to the hospital.
She goes to the hospital, she doesn't feel well, she's febrile, she feels short of breath. She goes to the hospital. In a very short time, she develops a failure to take a good breath. We had people in our hospital had to put the patient in a machine.
A medical mystery, and what no one could have known at the time, the patient had a brand new virus, H1N1, swine flu, and it was about to spread around the world. So we decided to fly to Mexico City to investigate.
We've arrived in Mexico City. The plane ride was sort of unremarkable. A lot of people talking about the swine flu, somewhat concerned. But as soon as we got here, there was obviously something going on here. Just take a look at all the people. A lot of people wearing masks. A lot of people have concern, adults and children alike, very concerned about the swine flu. We're here in Mexico City because we want to go to the hospital where this all started to see if we might establish some clues as to where this is going.
And clues started to emerge. At first, it was thought to be a late season flu. But something didn't make sense to us. It wasn't the very young and the elderly that were dying. It was people mainly between the ages of 20 and 50.
No doubt about it. This is terrible. I mean, this is a new disease, a new virus. No people had defenses against that virus. That's not good. Not for Mexico, for the whole world.
And there was something else. It was very contagious. Swine flu is normally spread from pigs to humans. But here, it can live anywhere. And hand-to-mouth contact is the biggest concern. ATM machines, computers, all potentially holding the virus.
Most efficient way of transmission is your hands.
This doctor doesn't even bother wearing a mask. And no one seems to understand why Mexico has been so hard hit. It is a mystery, which we will investigate. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, CNN, Mexico City.
Time for the shout-out. Which of these countries is Pakistan? If you think you know it, shout it out. Is it A, B, C, or D? You've got 3 seconds. Go! On this map, Pakistan is B. The country is located between India, Iran, and Afghanistan. That's your answer, and that's your shout-out.
U.S. Admiral Michael Mullen says he's very alarmed by the growing threat of extremism in Pakistan, specifically the influence of the Taliban. This militant group says it's there to impose Sharia law, this strict interpretation of Islamic law that's practiced by the group. As Ivan Watson explains, the Taliban is using that practice to gather support from local Pakistanis.
A father and son cutting grass to eke out a living. Mohammed Dawood and 15-year-old Faisal are illiterate and desperately poor. Their only hope to ease this burden of poverty, Sharia Islamic law. Only rich people get justice in Pakistan, Dawood says. We hope with Sharia, life will get better. That's exactly what the Taliban is demanding, to win the hearts and minds of tens of millions of poor Pakistanis.
These are the people the militants are trying to appeal to, and they're promising them something that many Pakistanis don't have. They're promising them a sense of justice. Many Pakistanis complain they have no fair shake in this society. The Taliban say they have the answer: Islamic Sharia law.
Amnesty International says the Taliban have promoted themselves as a kind of Islamic Robin Hood, attacking wealthy landlords and corrupt bureaucrats, shutting down courthouses, and replacing secular judges with Muslim clerics.
The Taliban move into an area, they use local existing resentments, that's for sure. They scare away some local thieves. They certainly impose very, very quick justice, very harsh justice. And initially, in some places, they're even welcomed.
But if farmers like Babar Hussain have their way, Taliban justice means taking away freedoms from Pakistani women.
Should they be driving cars?
Women should not even come out of their houses, he says. That's against Islam. Music, too, is against the Taliban's strict interpretation of Islam. If the Taliban's rural revolt succeeds, it will bring silence to the Pakistani countryside.
Following up now on a story out of Iran, where American journalist Roxana Saberi is on a hunger strike. The news was confirmed by her father, who says Saberi plans to continue the protest until she's freed from jail. Saberi was convicted of espionage earlier this month and sentenced to 8 years in prison. The U.S. government says Saberi is not a spy, and President Obama has called for her release. Saberi is planning to appeal her conviction.
Is this legit? The first Pontiac vehicle was introduced in the 1920s. Legit. The brand, which is part of the General Motors family, made its debut at the 1926 New York Auto Show.
By the end of the year, the brand will be gone. It's part of GM's plan to stay in business. The automaker also says it'll lay off about 23,000 workers by the year 2011. Many of those cuts first announced back in February. GM says it's focusing on some of its core brands like Chevy and Cadillac, which means for Pontiac, it's the end of an era. There will be less excitement at General Motors. After more than 80 years, its excitement division, Pontiac, has reached the end of the road. Maker of such streamlined beauties as this 1954 Bonneville Special, only 2 of these ever rolled. The company picked up speed as a performance brand in the years that followed.
Just sitting in this car, you feel like you're stepping back in time.
But you are.
But by 1979, when this Trans Am Bandit stalked the streets, Pontiac had reached peak power and began a long downhill drive. Despite selling more than 267,000 vehicles last year and assembling such models as the smooth-lined Solstice, company sales have dropped 70% in the last 3 decades. And when models lose money, even classic American muscle loses its strength. So whether it hit the road in 1929 or 2009, soon every Pontiac will be a classic. We've been getting a lot of comments on our blog about what grade you'd give President Obama on his first 100 days in office. We always welcome more, though. Head to CNNStudentNews.com and keep those report cards coming. Plus, tune in to CNN tomorrow night starting at 7 p.m. Eastern for coverage of the President's news conference marking this 100-day milestone. Well, to be honest with you, we were striking out on ideas for today's Before We Go segment until we heard Mackenzie Brown was doing the same thing, striking out. When the 12-year-old Little Leaguer took the mound last week, she struck out 18 batters, all guys, making her the first female in the history of her city's Little League to pitch a perfect game. Word of her skills spread fast. A few days later, Mackenzie got called up to the majors. And by that we mean she got to throw out the first pitch at a Mets game. Well, it's where we wrap up today's show. We will be taking the field again tomorrow. See y'all then.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mackenzie Brown has just thrown a perfect game. Congratulations.